And one of the things that you mention very often in your book, Eye for Design, and what I also see in your designs, is how brilliant you are with colours. Now, is this something that came naturally to you? Is it something that you learned? How did this all come about?
Well, it's something that was a great surprise for me, because I went to, my high school, I was obliged by my parents to do a classic, what is called classical lycée. So there was a lot of history, philosophy, Greek, Latin, Italian, no drawing, no, only history of art, but no, actually, we couldn't paint. So when finally I was able to go to design school, I had a gift for once. I could actually make colours. I was never really good at Greek and Latin. I did it, but it was such a struggle. And then all of a sudden, it was something that came natural to me. So even the teacher asked me to make colours for showing how to make them with pigments, and so this was a great thing. So I think yes, probably it's a gift.
Yeah. And I know that as well in your book you talk a lot about how your parents taught you to appreciate beauty in everything that you saw and in the way that you grew up. You mentioned a gorgeous house that you lived in, and I really feel like with you it's an innate talent, like be it the colour matching and everything else that you're so good at. It's interesting how it all came about.
It's yes, I think that what was incredible growing up was the fact that we were taken to museums really regularly, in a very normal way, from a very, very early age. And it was not a question of going to a museum. It was just, we're going to see some nice things. So, or going to good, beautiful concerts or opera. So somehow an entire aesthetic vocabulary started to, accompany one's life, or my sister and I's life, and in a very natural way. So it was, you just look at things and then remember them, and then some become completely key in your life 30 years later, So it's, yes, I lived in for some people, beautiful house, from others, terrifying. I always remember when we used to go to school from 8 to 1, and then you would come home for lunch every day. And if a friend of mine would come for lunch, they couldn't stand the fact that we had the glass table, which was not really that everyone had a glass table at the time. So you have your plate on the glass table, and you had to sit properly. So, let alone the macrobiotic food that my mother would give us. So the result is that yes, it was beautiful, but also very different. Certainly we had design, I remember we had Gioponti, Albini, we had, a lot of things that were, Tatler, impossible to eat with, by someone called Tapio Virkala, but dementing to eat with, and especially if you're a child. And of course now nobody would want them because they were in wood and you couldn't put them in the dishwasher, so forget it. The ultimate impractical life. But kind of always something interesting in the design.
Yeah. And this sort of innate sense of design, I feel, was maybe always with you. I'd love you to tell the story of when you saw the Picasso dove drawing aged 5.
She actually read the book.
I did.
Well, we used to go on holidays in Galantim, which was, I'm sure a lot of you did, maybe, or I don't know, we did it when we were children. And there's a Musée Picasso in Galantim that had it was not the most incredible Picassos, of course, but had a lot of beautiful ceramics and drawings. But the one thing that really struck me was this little, I think, how do you call it, Super 8 film, the kind of little film of him just drawing a dove. And in one line, 1 second, the dove was done. And the simplicity and the perfection of it was something that stayed with me forever. And I think I never seen until then. I saw, obviously, modern art. We used to go to the Fondation Met, for instance. This just because it was a summer holiday. I remember the two things together. But it was to do with the simplicity, the fact that something extremely beautiful doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be overworked, doesn't need to be, it could just be one line. And the fun he had. He really had fun. So I think I've seen that kind of line drawing so beautiful and fun in Andy Warhol many, many years later. So, but I was too old, so already I I had the knowledge of who he was, the fact that he was an artist. This I didn't know at the time. I was really very young. I just saw this man who was bald and in his underpants and was drawing, which was dead. And then there is the line of the dove. And this really, I think, had a very, very strong and probably definitive point for me wanting to draw, wanting to do something for drawing. I don't know why.
And do you find that simplicity that you're talking about carried on into what you're doing today in terms of your print designs and textiles and everything else that you do?
I don't know if it's simplicity. I think that I wish it could be simple. Not everything that one does is simple. But if it comes naturally, then it's like being simple. And I think that that's what I mean with simple, was the fact that it was completely natural. It was not forced. I think forced design as a designer is our idea of hell. And sometimes you do force design, and you have to go back and say, no, this doesn't really work. And you might do it because it's a commission. You might do it because you have a lot of different reason why you're doing it. But on the whole, I think that when something comes naturally, it's very unlikely it's going to be bad. So print design is not necessarily very simple, but when it works, and normally it's because it's just not forced.
And when we look at some of the images that are popping up in the background, when I look at them, I feel a lot of them are inspired by nature. Would you say that this is the case?
I think, yes, completely. I think every one of us is inspired by nature in different ways. Some of us maybe more, directly. So you see a flower, this, for instance, is so beautiful, this blue and dark, this color, indescribable color. And then they become very light at the top. So it's so nice, a hint of yellow. Of course we are inspired by nature. And some of us are maybe inspired in the most direct way, so the flower, the earth, whatever, it's there. And some of us maybe are inspired in looking in the microscope, so maybe just the way the DNA makes, is beautiful, elliptical shapes will inspire a design that is not necessarily, it almost looks like geometry, but then, the best geometry comes from nature. If you think about, the icicle, or when you see things really in the microscope. So, yes, I think we are nature, and that's what we are.
And then another thing that I like about your designs is how they really cross generations. I always feel that you're not necessarily designing for a certain age group or something, be it with everything that you do. For instance, right now you have your made.com Lulu collection, which is obviously maybe for a younger target audience, but again you've got that beautiful design for the bed linens and the duvet covers that you're doing that I guess could really be in any type of home. So who's the person that you do have in your mind when you're doing these things? Is there one?
I think that the beautiful design doesn't necessarily mean that someone who is... if you're doing fashion, it's different. I think fashion as such needs to be young. To follow fashion as you follow fashion, you can take it fantastically. I think that when you talk about style, then it's completely intergenerational. Because then you offer a style that could work or not work, for one, but might work for another person. But then it doesn't really matter the age. I remember, the happiest moment of my life was when I would design something, and then my eldest daughter would come to me and say, "Could I borrow that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, then I did it right." But then maybe the same thing. My mom would say, "Well, actually, that shirt is really cool. Do you do it my size?" So that was the idea that actually the design was good because it didn't really want to throw you in it. You could carry it. Yeah. And with interiors, I believe that is, for instance, Made. I adore working, collaborating with Made.com. I don't know if you know it, but I think they're brilliant because it's fun, it's immediate, and it's good design without spending a fortune for it. So there is an element of luxury there. Now, of course, we just done a collection of what they call bedding, so sheets and even towels we did and duvets. And, we ended up doing a grown-ups bit of the collection, which I always work out, and then a very young one with basically the cover of my book, all the eyes as a duvet cover. And I kind of thought, who's going to use it? But then, there is all this, young generation who actually would find it quite amusing to have it. I would go definitely for the jacquard, but, I'm not that group anymore.
Yeah. And so, out of sort of all the things you've done so far in your career, has there been a favourite moment for you, or something that you've enjoyed doing more than everything else? Because you seem to have done so much.
It just seems like that.
Really?
I think when you're a textile designer, somehow, so you can apply your design to so many different things that somehow naturally you're doing a lot of different things. It's not by chance, it's because the nature of the weave or the print lends itself to do things from book covers to obviously rugs, then fabrics, then dresses, then name it. My favorite things are the things that I'm somehow about to do, because it's always the anticipation of having designed something and be just about to see how it became in reality. That, I think, is one of my favorite moments. So it always, hopefully, is good. I will have a lot of favorite moments to come.
Yeah.
But it's never something I've done. It's more something I'm about to do. I think a lot of designers think that way, though.
And then in terms of, what would you say would be the sort of essence of Allegra in terms of a fabric or a print? What would be your hallmark, would you say, that carries on throughout all your designs, be it your clothing or your rugs? Is there something in particular?
From the print point of view, I remember when I was at school, design school in Milan, what was very important was to find our own style, because we're all told the same things. In fact, we were kind of a modernist design school, and we all were doing the same homework. And it was very difficult to come out with your own style in that homework when you have to, do the same maybe shape or the same transition of colors, when you have to do all the kind of it and wheel. But I would say that what was a very important thing for me was to find my own alphabet in design, and which would then allow me to create my own vocabulary, which would give me my own style. So the drop somehow represents that, and it's one of the shapes I always like doing, and is between a drop or an almond shape, very feminine if you want, and then the combination of all of that. So when I see things like that, even though we're looking at something that is not like that, it's something that is very much my DNA, if you want.
Yeah. And then you talk a lot about your alphabet, which, I'd love for you to tell people about what an alphabet is in design, and how you come up with generating your own way of doing it.
It's obviously, we have all our, own way of, you see it with artists, you see it with writers, different styles. And when you do print, somehow it's not only the kind of prints. Also, when I was at school, we had a very different way of being taught, because now we're computers. So it's very, very much easier to just develop continuously new things. When you had to draw them all, I remember at the beginning of when I used to do fabrics, I would do 3 or 4 color combination, because I like watercolor, so I would do this watercolor. It would take me forever. So designing just one, small collection of 5 fabrics and 4 colors would be endless. It would take really a long time. Now with computers it's much quicker. But when we did that, somehow we needed to find what was our characteristic. Why my drawing was different from Francesca's or Simon. Why? Because we had our own style, and for me in my prints was to create a vocabulary of shapes, really, that then would accompany me and put them in different ways. They would create different shapes, different designs altogether, not really similar at all with each other. So it was very much about the A, B, C, D of the square and a little bit around that put together will create my own thing.
And I noticed when I look at your designs, there seems to be a lot of inspiration from different countries. So, for instance, the evil eye is Turkish or Greek, and then you have the water lilies that would remind me of the south of France, and on it goes. So, where are your favourite destinations?
That's a water lily for me. Okay. That's what it was. It was, but isn't. But yes.
So, where are your favourite destinations that you would continually return to get inspiration?
Oh, for someone who loves travelling.
Top 3.
Well, you know, I left Italy at 21 and 22, and I came to live in England, and then I lived in England and New York, and then England again, and went to Italy for holidays, a month, so on holiday, but just staying in one place, Tuscany. And now I'm rediscovering Italy, and I find that it's one of my favorite destinations because per square meters has the most incredible amount of beautiful things to see. And somehow, you know, it's really kind of at your service, and it's not treated very well. We Italians are not very good with our museums and our beautiful things, and that's a shame. But somehow it's very accessible. So I love, you know, I've visited a bit of Palermo this summer. I mean, the most extraordinary things. You know, it's so beautiful palazzo, beautiful fabrics, beautiful frescoes. So I love going to Italy, especially the Italy that I don't know. You know, I'm from Torino, and then I went to study in Milan, and I came here. Of course, we visited the big cities, but the small places, no. And of course, India. How can one not like India? I mean, it's just for a designer, India is like it's everything. Because it has the colours, has the texture, has the richness, has the simplicity, it has so much. The architecture is extraordinary. It has the exotic side. I don't know anyone who's a designer who doesn't like India. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yeah, absolutely. And then thousands of different places. I mean, just name me one, and if I could, I'd just take a ticket and go. Because I love traveling. I think it's just, even going, 15, kilometers away from where you are and not really having seen what, something different,
And do you find you travel a lot for your work, doing maybe different interior design schemes around the world, or is it mostly European-centric? Where does your life take you?
It's more European, I would say. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of different rugs commission around Europe.
And when you begin a commission with someone, I'm always intrigued as to the process, how it works, because obviously as a designer, you need to collaborate in a way with the person, who's doing the commission. But I find it probably quite difficult if you have a vision and maybe their vision isn't as tasteful as yours. How do you kind of go about navigating that kind of pathway between the two of you?
That's a good one, huh? I think that it's very important to respect the way other people live, because you can decide to do a white house that is all fantastically perfect and with a lot of very sharp edges, and then if there are 3 children in the house, it's going to be a total disaster, even if the design is wonderful. Somehow it's important to see how the person lives and what they like. And if they come to you, they already have an idea of what you can do. Like a lot of interior design projects start really with a rug, or someone liking my fabric and says, oh my God, I really like the design, so can we put it together, can it become something else, and change the room. So it's important to understand how the person wants to live. There's no point in giving someone a grand dining room if they never eat at home, because it's really a loss of the room. Or to make a library for someone who doesn't really like to read books or read Kindles, Yeah. So it's so much to do with how they like to live. And then if they come to you, it's because, I mean, if they come to me, obviously they like somehow prints, or, you know, we woven, and they like rugs, so they like colours. And so there is a starting point that is common. Yeah, that's how somehow it starts.
And is there a favourite design commission that you've done in your career?
I've done an incredibly difficult design commission. I mean, really, really difficult. And I'm extremely proud of it, if I can say. Because I was asked by a friend to design a rug for her room. Now the room was probably maybe in length double the size, double the size of this room, and in width probably to the pillar. So a huge, huge sitting room with two rugs that were museum pieces, 18th century, one Persian and one Indian rugs. But one of them reminded me of the exhibition that the Metropolitan Museum had called Flower Underfoot. So really, seriously, extremely beautiful rugs. And that's pretty daunting, because the rugs was going to stay there. So it would just, mine would be one en plus. And the same was for the art. The art was pretty fantastic and very, very, the furniture also of very, very high level. So I arrived in a house that had already a kind of a combination. It's like, the ingredients of your dinner, they're so incredibly special, and then you are supposed to make the pudding, and you are not going to make an apple crumble, but actually it could be good, but it wouldn't work. So it was complicated, because I wanted to keep the language, a conversation between the two rugs, the three rugs, and at the end it worked out very, very beautifully, and she's delighted, and I ended up redesigning the house, which was an incredible compliment. That was a complicated commission. Then I did an entire house of rugs, 6 rugs for a house that was a Neutra house in Los Angeles. So already the excitement of doing something that was, to have my rugs in a house designed by Neutra, and we did it all by emails. And this was extraordinary. And it would never happen again. But it's like, it probably was beginner's luck. But it kind of worked. And I haven't been to see it. I'm dying to see it. I've seen bits and pieces of pictures. But they were difficult, because so much is to do with being in the place, feeling the place, looking at the place. So this was a difficult one. Yes.
And then in your own home, are you sort of constantly feeling the need to kind of change things around and refresh things? I always think as a designer, especially with access to everything that you have access to, I would never be sort of able to kind of be happy for, say, more than 6 months, because then I want the newest, latest fabric that I've seen. Is it like that? Yeah?
Absolutely. A bit expensive at times, so sometimes you have to curb your enthusiasm, because no, not another new rug, no. Or, but I want to see, now for instance, I'm dying to put the new fabric in somewhere in the house, because I just designed linen, and I want to see it up. Yeah. I think I'm going to see it up in someone else's flat before mine. But yes, I think that's a temptation, of course. At least I do it with the accessories, with the pillows. Pillows change all the time. And then with maid, I have a little armchair from maid, and a stool, and I have a poof, and they do the tour of the house, they go up and down. Yeah, we do a lot of that. Yeah.
But then, are there, say, 3 pieces that you have that you would, always continue in whichever home you were living in to remain with you, that you would always put in one of your schemes, like a personal scheme? Do you have those that you just love?
Yes, I have an incredible mobile that a friend of mine gave me. I mean, she's an artist and designed them with fabulous mobile that hangs on top of my dining room. And I think this is going to be with me forever, because I really love it. And I think it just makes a room very special. And it could be, doesn't necessarily end up in another dining room. It could be in a corner in a sitting room, or on top of in your bedroom. So it's not that it has to be in a dining room, but that would come with me, will be with me all the time. And then and then a mirror. That it was with me when I was extremely young, in my first flat when I was 22. Yeah. So it's still the same mirror, the Venini mirror, that was, I think, given, actually it was given by the old Mr. Venini to my grandfather. And for some reason I have it, and my sister was never crossed with that. So.
And do you remember the first piece of furniture that you bought from a...
Precisely,
really,
absolutely. It was so expensive for me. It was from Themes and Variations in 1988. A sharkskin desk that looked very much by Jean-Michel Franck, and of course wasn't. Was someone who liked Jean-Michel Franck, and I still have it, and I love it. It was the first piece of furniture where I spent money. Of course, I adore Portobello. Since from the first day I arrived in London, I think I started to go to Portobello, so sometimes I get very good pieces of furniture there, but it's more smaller things.
And is there anywhere in Portobello that you would recommend to...
Depends what you're looking for. Depends if you're looking for furniture, then you have to go up towards Goulburn Road. But for clothes, it's really Friday under the tent. Yeah, I love there. It's my favourite thing in the world.
You find some great things.
One finds some great things. Yeah.
And then in London, or sort of around London, where are your favourite places to find great pieces of furniture or things for the home?
There are certain places I really like. I like Old Lily Road. Then, of course, I can tell you Pimlico, and who doesn't like Pimlico? I mean, it's such beautiful things. But it's very much, just going over to the same places and see what they have. There are some dealers with very nice things. Then occasionally, you go. Really, you look online and find where the auctions are. If you want to have an old piece of furniture, if you want something new, I like going to sometimes to my friend Tom Dixon. He does very, very beautiful things, new design, and always very, very clever and not too aggressively in your face, but new, different. Yeah.
And in your design schemes, I always notice that you like to kind of juxtapose the old and the new, or the fragile and then the very strong, and the textures. But there always seems to be a very nice harmony and balance in everything that you do. How do you go about achieving this?
I don't know. I think it's really... It's kind of male-female somehow, that gives us the balance. It's the yin and the yang in another way, if you want. Is the what's called combining. It's the harmony. It's the harmony that is you achieve. It's not even achieved. When things are naturally come out naturally, somehow they work together, and also you end up having old and new because we are old and new. It's very difficult to start a house with nothing. You have your grandmother who's left you something, or your aunt, or your mum, or maybe you bought something when you were 22, but you would never want to get rid of it, and then it has to go with something else, it has to go with something else, and then you buy something, and then you get married, and that person comes with something else. So somehow it's like it's naturally is an accumulation. It's our history. I think that has to do with our history. Yeah. And I think that's what makes the interiors also quite beautiful for that, because they are somehow they recount who we are. Then putting them together and making them harmonic is probably our job. Yeah,
putting the puzzle together.
Yes, somehow. But we all come with a puzzle.
And we've spoken about things that you sort of like, love in interior schemes, but are there certain things that when you see, you think, oh my goodness, I really don't like this? Whatever it may be.
I should see it before saying it, because sometimes I don't have any preconceptions somehow. I quite like, it depends on the context, It's very difficult not to like something but then maybe in the certain shapes I don't like. But then, you know, I don't like them, but maybe in the right context it will work very well. You know, at one point nobody liked the 80s interiors. Now 80s interiors are coming back, and you know, until a minute ago, ooh, 80s interiors. Actually, there's some fabulous things in the 80s interiors, but it's fashion, is knowing how to put them together. Is again, it's a question of harmony. I don't have any pet hate.
And I think probably as a designer you're continuously evolving throughout your career and throughout your life, and developing what you call your eye even more as each kind of season goes along. So
one hopes.
Yeah.
One hopes.
And so
sometimes one gets stuck.
Yeah. I'm sure not.
Terrible times when one gets stuck, but then you kind of do nothing for a week, and then you maximum a week. Then if you cannot work, then it becomes depressing. It's I would say a week is the max.
And now, in terms of fashion, you've been named as one of the top 10 best dressed in the world, which is quite an accolade. So in terms of your own personal sort of fashion style, is that something, you know, have you always been interested in clothes and fashion itself from a very, very young age, as well as interiors and design?
Yes. Yeah. To such an extent that when I was very young, I must have been 7 or 8, I would change 3 times a day. And my mother was so cross with me and could not handle this kind of dresses that I will always remember my father coming back from Austria with lederhosen.
Lovely.
They're horrible lederhosen, and I had to wear them for a month, changing only the shirt. It stayed with me, and nothing I hate the most than lederhosen. Really? I promise you. It's like, it just reminds me of the fact that I was not allowed to change, and they were made out of leather, so it was perfectly fine. And oh my God, the nightmare. Lederhosen is my idea of nightmare, and yes, so I always liked I like fashion, I like clothes, yes, I do. Yeah. And I think I started to buy, you know, vintage, very smartly said now. Actually, I heard also some people call it archives, which is, you know, rather grand, but this was like second-hand from markets, clothes at the age of 13. Yeah. And then the equivalent of Portobello in Turin.
And then did you always have your own sort of style?
Then I designed clothes. I remember designing clothes from early age, you know, just wanting a certain shape. And I remember so well that in the 80s, I had very broad shoulders, and I really couldn't do the 80s because it wasn't power dressing, but already when you had you know, I was Star Trek, I couldn't do it. So I just had this, everything kind of falling off, and so some things I was literally designing them myself because they had a look that applied to me. I could never do the fabulous 80s. I mean, I think especially in Italy is an incredibly important moment in fashion because it's when the industry really started to become an industry and makes the, you know, is relevant to our economy. It really starts there and then. But from a personal point of view, I couldn't do it. Just too big.
And then in terms of sharing your style tips with our audience, I always find that people love to know, you know, what your kind of things are, like how you dress, like what tips would you maybe give people in terms of how they dress themselves? Is there anything that really springs out to you?
I think one has to dress according to one's mood. Because if you feel very shy, you cannot go out dressed in the most exuberant way. But then in a day where you're feeling completely opposite, you can. So somehow it has to be organic to you. The way you feel reflects in the way you dress it, because then your dress somehow doesn't carry you, you carry the dress. And I think that's the kind of a key to feel natural. And the moment you feel natural, you can be elegant. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have very expensive clothes on. It's nothing to do with that. It's more really in how you feel in your clothes.
Confidence.
And I never think that something uncomfortable should be worn. Ever.
Right.
I mean, just doesn't make any sense.
Yes, I agree.
No, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, from very high, I'm not saying one shouldn't wear things, but they need to be comfortable, otherwise it's going to look bizarre.
And then in terms of sort of, you know, what 3 things in your wardrobe could you not do without? Because you always dress, I'd say, sort of very elegant and in a classic style, which is actually very, very difficult to get right, I think. So it's far easier maybe to go into the shops and just buy whatever is kind of in for the season sometimes, rather than seeking out the things that maybe really suit you the most.
I have a dress by Romeo Gigli 1985 that I still have and I still wear, and I'm very lucky because I don't ruin clothes, so they're really beautiful. I have a dress of my grandmother from the 20s that I adore, evening. And those are the things that I can, and I actually accumulate clothes, I'm afraid. I mean, I'm not, and I would never want to have someone coming in my wardrobe saying yes, no, throw away. When I see these people doing this wonderful job, they're never in my house. There is no way. It gets folded, goes into bags, because I always think, Angelica and Brod, my daughters could wear them maybe in 10 years.
You're the best mum. My mum never did that.
My mum neither.
So angry at
my
her.
mum neither. But I do it, and also let's say that 70% of the clothes is mine. I mean, I designed it, so somehow I want to keep it because it's good for me to have them. So they're all in zip, this wonderful LLB zipper. And they're carried up and down, you know, from attic to, you know, vaults.
How often do you go through them to check what you have? Or do you have like a very good...
No, I have moments where I, like 2 years, and moments when every 3 months I say, oh my God, but I designed that, and it would be so perfect for that party where, you know, she's going or I'm going on. So, yeah.
And do you wear a lot of your own designs
Yes,
as well?
I would say, yes.
Yeah.
But for trousers and shoes, yes.
Okay, and shirts. And
yes, shirts and dresses, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And now I'm having great fun just doing also this very, very limited edition, which I find very amusing.
Which is just sold online, is that correct?
Online, but very small as well, so when it's finished, it's finished, which is, I think, is quite fun.
No, I definitely think that's the way that things are going now. People love having something that's not mass-produced.
Also, yes, I think the mass-produced is fantastic, and I think that it's impossible not to dress well now. Impossible for men or for women. Impossible. Because it's very accessible. And having said that, you know, it's also something so personal that you need to decide how you want to feel.
And how do you feel about design being accessible? Is that something?
I believe in design. I mean, I'm a great believer. I mean, that's why my collaboration with Make.com, with West Elm, a few years ago, I don't think that design needs to be expensive to be beautiful. I think that there is design, and we're talking, I mean, it doesn't matter interiors or fashion or is irrelevant. I mean, I think that design in itself, if it's good, is the luxury. Then, I mean, I've done a rug that's client wanted to have it in pashmina, which was a very good idea, but pashmina this high, incredibly difficult to design something like this, because when the pashmina is high, and it's a bit like sheepskin, but actually, you know, whatever it's called, long hair, but it's pashmina. So the design, if you have a design, it doesn't really show very much. So this was a very difficult commission. This is the ultimate luxury. I mean, but the same design could be really, really good in a killing like. Yeah. So it's not that one is better than the other. One probably costs 10 times the other.
And so how often do you sort of come up with new ideas for designs and fabrics? Is it something that you sit down and do, say, twice a year, like the big fashion designers do,
no.
More now, or it just comes to you and you draw it?
What I love to do is just sit down at my desk and just design, and it's irrelevant for, you know, for a season, or I just design things, and I have a kind of a portfolio that gets really fatter and fatter, and then after a few maybe weeks gets incredibly thin because half of the stuff is so bad that I have to throw it away, not even look at it anymore. So then it starts to get fun again. Then at one point I said, okay, now this could be a great rug. But at the same time could be, I mean, we just done a rug with a rug company that is exactly the same as one design of the new linen collection. And it's so fabulous because we didn't change it at all. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. When you have something that in small works very well, and in big you need to change it in order to work, because not necessarily, blown up is going to work. Well, this particular design worked beautifully, just as it was. And it was a winner. And it started as an idea, it started for fabrics, and I thought it was going to be a silk fabric. And instead it became a linen/rug.
And I suppose it goes into what you were saying before about not being forced into doing something.
Yeah.
Because then obviously you're more creative when it just comes to you.
But a lot of times one is forced, because you need to do something that has to be for, very commercial colours. So when you start with commercial colours when you collaborate with big companies, then you need to do, it's very important to do these colours that are a bit more, not generic, but they could work in different schemes.
Yeah.
So they can, for instance, rugs, they hold the room together. So when I do collections for the rug company, for instance, we do very muted colours because they would work, necessarily they would work much better, that's one of them, in a room. When I do my commission work, then I go rather wild. So it's a different, it depends for what.
Yeah. And then there's certain things that people will, very popular when they ask you to commission something, and there's certain, designs, like your water lily design or something that people love and they always ask you for. Is it sort of a big different range of things?
There are certain design people like very much, and they're the one that, as we said before, they have to do with the drops, they have to do, they're kind of more the recognizable one. But then when you're doing to commission, then it's just, I want to design this for my house and works with what I have. So then the dialogue is very much to get my vocabulary, to, my language, to speak with their language and to find a common ground.
They always say that the most successful designers are the ones that design for themselves. Do you agree with that?
I think that what is very true is, as a designer, if you only work for other companies, you have no idea what things cost. I'm probably taking the question in a completely different direction. But I think that it's very important to know how much it costs you to design something, because then you will know exactly what is entailed. Like, it's great to design, prints with 12 colours in it. It's all okay if you're doing it digitally. I'm talking also in interior fabrics. And but then digital fabric costs so much more. So, and if you do the screens, the more screens you have, the more expensive it is. So it's good to know how much things cost, and this when you have your own, when you do your own things and you pay for your own things, then you have one more, little knowledge that is actually crucial. So in that respect, it's important.
And are there certain fabrics that you really love working with more than others? Or?
Yes, I realise that some fabrics are more successful than the other because of that.
Okay.
And in a way, I don't think you asked me if we design for ourselves. I don't think one designs for ourselves, but one obviously puts oneself in the design. And so, of course, that's what you're doing. You're putting yourself forward. And you say, okay, for instance, when I did my kaftan, I need kaftan. So I designed it because of a personal need. I wanted to have embroidered blankets, but they had my design. Embroidered blankets at the time, they were very kind of girly or they didn't have a sense of design, they had a sense of decoration.
Yeah.
So I did it because I needed it, and then from the need started a kind of a fascination by creating collection from it. But it's because I never did embroidery before. Embroidery was something very much that started after the prints.
Well, I think our talk's coming to an end now, unless there's anything else that you want to add.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, yes, thank you for coming. That's what I wanted to ask. Very much. Thank you for coming.
Does anyone have any questions? And if so, then Becky can pass the microphone so we can all hear you.
Well, I just have an observation rather than a question. That somebody who likes patterns, you're wearing something very...
You know, I thought about it today, but then I thought, I have all these patterns behind me. I thought if I put a marble pattern, it's going to be very confusing. And because I normally, I think I did tell you that. I said, can you imagine, I'm not wearing pattern. How bizarre. And I'm wearing pink, which I never wear. But I thought that all the patterns were behind me. Yes. But it's completely, I observed it myself and you're wrong. Well spotted. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Allegra, thank you so much for such a wonderful
you.
session. You keep referring to these new fabrics, these new linens, and we are so lucky that for this season, Allegra's fabrics are going to be in the GP&J Baker showroom, and they very, very kindly invited everybody to come along to Design Centre East on the ground floor to see the new fabrics. And I've seen them, I have to say, they are breathtaking.
You like it?
Absolutely lovely. So I hope you'll join us for the tea in the GP&J Baker showroom. There are people in the... there are lots of our chaps in uniform, and they'll guide you down if you get lost. I just thought it was the most wonderful, informative, fantastic session. You said your design is putting things together and making them harmonic. And honestly, that's how it felt today, this afternoon. Us all sitting here. It's had a most wonderful atmosphere. Allegra, thank you so much.
Thank you all of you.
And Mariella, thank you so much.